Hello, welcome to the Revenue Zone. Come with me and I will be your guide as we journey through this awe-inspiring labyrinth of controls and accounts. I present to you a building. This structure houses Babbitt Nelson Engineering LLC. It is a structural and civil engineering firm located in sunny Mesa, Arizona. The firm was formed in July of 2008 by these men, Felipe Babbitt and Craig Nelson. The firm creates structural designs for a myriad of contractors and developers. They specialize in blueprints for residential and small commercial buildings. They're a relatively small firm with only about 15 employees. Now, we're going to travel to their world. We're going to walk among them and examine their revenue cycle. The revenue cycle begins when a client calls in to receive a quote on a project. The principal gets all the pertinent information for the project and begins to fill out the form. There are currently no controls on this form, leaving it open to errors. The principal sends the quote to the client to get their approval before moving forward. The client then responds with their decision on the quote. Once the client approves the quote, the work begins. The finished plans are then returned to the principal, who reviews them, approves them, and then sends them to the client. The invoicing process now begins. The principal creates the invoice and sends the invoice to the client. The client then comes in to drop off the check for their invoice, where it is received by the administrative assistant, who from here on out will be known as the admin. The admin marks the check as for deposit only. She then enters the payment into QuickBooks and then photocopies the checks. Following that, she prepares the deposit slip and takes the check to the bank. After returning from the bank, she records the deposit, staples the photocopy of the check to the deposit slip, and files the documents. What you just saw was the normal revenue cycle. But things are not always that easy. We're going to travel now to a realm where evil motives and dark forces flourish in the lack of controls. Stay close. As this twisted process now begins, we again find ourselves with the principal, but this time he's not so dedicated. His laxed attitude towards the form leads to many errors. He sends the quote which contains errors to the client, who who unknowingly accepts it. Once the project work is complete, we once again join the principal. But he's more worried about checking his Facegrams and Instabook to bother checking the work. He speedily approves it and sends it off to the client. Now let's focus on our friend, the admin. In this reality, she is downright sinister. When the client comes in to deliver the check, she hastily pockets the money. She then voids the invoice in QuickBooks, covering all tracks of her misdeed. That was less than ideal. After examining this pitiful example of internal controls, we can fully understand why they are needed. We're going to travel now to a place that is in every way the opposite of what you've just seen. It is a place where internal controls are properly implemented to protect the firm. This is our dutiful principal, hard at work to serve his clients. He takes down all the necessary information and enters it into a digital form that performs checks to ensure that the form is filled out correctly. As part of the process, he even has a second principal come and review the quote. Once the quote has been reviewed, he sends it off to the client. Once they receive approval, they begin work on the project. When the work is complete, the principal thoroughly reviews the plans, approves them, and sends them off to the client. This time, when the client comes in to deliver the check, the admin calls the principal so that there are two people present when she receives it. She then immediately marks the check as for deposit only. She then enters the payment into QuickBooks and photocopies the checks. She then heads off to the bank to make the deposit. When she returns from the bank, she calls the principal, who then reviews and approves the deposit. So what have we learned on our journey through Babbitt Nelson's revenue cycle? We've seen that there are several areas of vulnerability that leave the firm open to fraud, but hope remains. And that hope's name is internal controls.
If the firm implements the internal controls that we have seen here in our last timeline, the risk of fraud will be mitigated, and they will never have to again journey with me through the revenue zone.